All right. Well, you're still there? Still good? Let's do it. I
Yeah.
think now you're the one who wanted to talk about this today, Trent. I don't know why, but I'm going to let you take the lead on this one because politics, not my. It's not A. It's not my forte, and B. I hate them. And like we can talk about why and why I went off the political it's not even enthusiasm, frustration, I suppose. And I think that's probably a good starting point, or a good question to ask first, I suppose, would be what made you want to talk about this today?
Yeah, so I posted like a thing on Sunday just with all the political stuff going on. I mean, it's particularly obviously in the United States. I mean, that's really, but I think it has all became like global. And it was a little bit of a hot topic. I feel like people didn't really want to admit to or not to being so, I don't know, enveloped around like the political circus that I don't know if I offended people or didn't offend people, but I guess what the crux of it is that I want to remind people as we head into, and again, specifically people in the United States, that as we head into this next presidential candidate race, that what you do for yourself and for your family is going to have pay so many more dividends than the person that you vote for at the poll booth. Like it 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 literally it almost is it's like it feels like a distraction from the real stuff that's going on in people's lives, but I don't really mean to be like to talk down to people that are into that, because I think it is like I think it is important to an extent, but the reality is that people think that other people are going to solve their problems, and it's just not going to happen like that. Like you have to take it upon yourself to lead you and your family and your bloodline into the future. And uh so as much as this is like a political discussion, I think it's more of like an anti-political discussion in that um I don't care which side of the fence, or I don't know how many sides of the fence there are. I just want people to realize that you can do more for yourself and your family than any politician can.
Anti-politics. Now you're talking my language. I've said before that my politics are really simple, right? Leave me and my family alone. And I know people say that's very libertarian, but at the same time, you know, I would only say I'm as libertarian as far as it makes sense, because libertarianism, not to talk about the different political spectrums or political affiliations too much, um, libertarianism kind of relies on people not being retarded, I suppose. And I don't know what your opinion is specifically on, you know, the way things are going politically, but I think it's fair to say that most of the shenanigans, not the whole political thing in general, but most of the political shenanigans are retarded. And I am not interested in um, bringing that element and aspect in any of its many forms into my life to add additional problems or unnecessary burdens. That is what puts me off politics. I got into it for a while. And when I say into it, I mean like I was reading like bills being passed. I don't know what was wrong with me, man. Like I was like reading these bills that were being passed, and like some of the things that were getting pushed through were like ridiculous. Like one, I can't remember specifically, and people, anybody out there who wants to go and find it, please reach out to me and correct me if I'm wrong. But the wording on the specific bill that I read, where I was just like, this is the tipping point, was it was like the Fair and Equitable Access to Food for Children from Underprivileged Backgrounds bill or something like that, right? And they were, it was getting pushed, and it was like, who's going to vote against this? But you go into like page 53 under like clause 85D or something like that, and it's like nobody can have any more than 3 days worth of food in their home. I'm paraphrasing, but um, otherwise it could be confiscated. And it was like, well, this is just like a thinly veiled attempt to prevent people being able to take care of themselves. and like it apparently extends to gardens and livestock as well. Um, I don't personally think it'll be acted upon. It's like a one how to start a coup, 101. I start doing that, but the fact that it's there and now in a bill and now theoretically legal, and I was doing this with like a group of other people, so it wasn't just purely my like, you know, paranoid, delusional brain putting these pieces in place. But it was at that point I was like, you know what? None of this really matters at the end of the day. Like they're just gonna put whatever they want and on a piece of paper, and dum dums are gonna sign off on it, collecting payment, and then say, should we all get paid more? We're the people that decide that, and then they get to sign off on it. It's just none of this really makes any sense to be like worried about. It's just the same as like inflation. You can be like sitting there complaining about inflation and worried about inflation and the taxes are going up and all this stuff, and they're going to, and they're going to keep going up. But and the average person can continue getting poorer, but the reason for that is because they're focused on inflation. They're focused on taxes instead of just focusing on making more money, focusing on freeing themselves and their family from the concern of inflation and taxes. And it sucks. And it sucks for most people. And I can guarantee for most people listening, it's going to suck, right? It sucks for me. But instead of being like worried about, oh, cheese is $1 more expensive this week, it's like, okay, how can I make $10 more this week than I made last week? How can I make $100 more this month? How can I make $1,000 more per month per year? That's really what people need to be focusing on, and that's why I got put onto like the whole. Because what was happening? And I'll let you guys talk again in a second. I didn't think I'd have much to say about this, but apparently I do. So what was happening is I was focusing on all these political things. And like, oh, this bill, they're gonna pull us over on the side of the road. The army can arrest us now. No, I couldn't like this. And I was like, I'm just getting stressed out. And other elements of my life are like not enjoyable anymore. And like, I could be, doing fencing on my property like I am now. That's why I'm dressed like this for anybody watching. I could be working on my garden and growing more food. I could be, hand milking a sheep like we're doing now. I could be doing these things, and these things actually make a difference. And they not only make a difference in like from like a financial perspective, but also on the impression of the world that my children have. And that's really what matters at the end of the day. Now, Jake, you've been awfully quiet there, and I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on the current political climate. Are we talking full retard here, or not you, not you, but I mean, are we talking like people are going full retard here, or are we talking about like, do you think the current energy that we're seeing, and I haven't been on Twitter around or X, sorry, or around that topic too much, but I'm gathering from what I see in Lords of X that the energy is kind of going a little bit highly polarized. It's gone magnetic here, in the repulsion form, not the attraction form.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, and I think it's interesting because like you've seen like even like on Twitter or X, like all these creators are like they're trying to cash in on it, right? Like they're trying to all of a sudden like even like data accounts and all this like every time you see them on the timeline, all they're talking about is the stuff going on in the U.S. with the presidential debates and the elections, and now what's going on with removing candidates and all that stuff. And it's like Trent hit on something earlier. Where he said, like almost like an anti-government narrative. And the way I look at it is, yes, it is anti-government, but it's also really it's just pro-family. Like for me, I pay attention to government politics so far as to the things that would directly impact me or my family. Like for instance, like there's certain laws that you need to be aware of based on where you live. Like, different laws about, like when we used to live right next to the woods and there was very strict laws in the area, like don't harm the bears unless even if they're coming under your house and taking all of your stuff, you still can't touch them and all that type of stuff. And you like, get into serious trouble for that kind of stuff. So those types of things you need to know because they are directly going to impact you. The reality is when it comes to politicians is that they all lie. They all want what's best for themselves and not us. And anyone who tries to say otherwise or believes otherwise, that they're being naive on a major level. To think about how crazy it's gotten, I tuned in to the last like debate that they did a few weeks ago, just for a little bit, because it was on, and we don't even really watch that much live TV in our house, to be honest. Mostly our live TV consists of watching sports, if anything. But so we watch this, and about within 10 minutes, it's basically turned into like a 5-year-old level argument where they're name calling. They're challenging each other to a golf match as if that's going to be determine who's the more qualified person to be the next president of the United States. It's like they sound literally like 5-year-olds arguing on the playground, and it's like, if that doesn't tell people not to worry about that and truly just worry about what they can do for their families, I don't really know what will. But at the end of the day, like, as a husband and as a father, it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm doing whatever it is I need to do to make sure that my family is in the best situation possible now, a year from now, 5 years from now, 50 years from now. That's my duty. And nothing about who is elected really changes what my responsibility is. Now, like you mentioned with the whole thing with inflation, I mean, that's essentially why we're here, right? Like, we're trying to figure out ways to make more money because we can't do anything about the cost of stuff. If I go to the store, my groceries might be more expensive. There's nothing I can do about that. The only thing I can do is try to find a way to make smarter financial choices with budgeting, and then also make more money in some fashion. So, I am of the belief that it's our responsibility to control what we can control. And so that's kind of what I focus on whenever Trent had mentioned talking about this week. I think it's a perfect time to do this because so many people are getting so wrapped up into what's going on. And it's just going to be such a shame if, 4 years from now, regardless of who's elected, if you've not put the energy into what needs to be with your family, regardless of who's elected, it's going to be a sad situation.
One thing, actually, there's a few things. I made a couple of notes here, but one thing I think is important to kind of highlight, and I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this concept before, and this is like not even really political. This applies to anything. And in fact, before I say this, just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying at the end there, with the budgeting and making more money, there's also the element of saving money as well. Like I was saying this on a call earlier today, when you have, I mean, you guys would call it a homestead, we call it lifestyle block here, whatever. When you got land, it kind of can be, and is for a time at least, a money sink, a money pit. And the idea of having land isn't really to like make money off it, it's to save money. And it might not be even saving money in the sense where like I don't have to pay for groceries anymore, even though that'd be nice. It might be now my food's high quality. It might cost you as much as to grow as it did, and especially if you can't get time to grow broccoli as you would pay for in the supermarket, but the quality is much higher. And it's just something you wouldn't get anywhere else. And also there's the element of being removed from an epicenter of people as well. But on top of that, when you were saying we've got to have an impact on our family, I don't know if you guys are aware of the concept, and again, it doesn't necessarily apply to politics, it applies to everything. There is a model, I suppose, called circles of influence. Do you guys know this?
That sounds familiar.
It sounds familiar, but
So the idea is like you have these circles, it could be spheres, whatever it is, but you start off with like, I can't see myself at the moment, I cover myself up so I don't keep looking at myself, but I think this is about the center here. So you start off with a circle in the center, and this is yourself. This is your internal monologue, dialogue, whatever you want to call it, depending how crazy you are, I guess. Your internal state of mind, and this is what you have the most control over. And then once you've got control over this, then you can go to the next level out, which is your family. You can influence them a bit more. Then once you've kind of maxed out your influence on your family, then you can go to your friends, and then you can influence them a bit more. And then once you've got that kind of mastered and under control, then I'm not saying control your friends, but you're able to influence them through the state of control that you have over yourself, and obviously influence you have over your family as well. Then you can go out to your wider community and actually make an impact there. And then after that, you can impact the world. But there's no point in trying to impact the world if you can't impact yourself. And you'll never have a positive impact on your family if you can't have a positive impact on yourself. And the same thing goes, it's like the world out here with the political sphere is like trying to come crashing in and impact all these other elements of your life and burrow its way down into you. And so I'm not saying like hold your kid up as a shield against politics or anything like that. But the idea is like that's going to come in and try to attack your influence in these areas. And most important is that little nucleus at the middle where you try to have control over yourself. And you can't have control over yourself if that outside political influence is burrowing its way in and coming right and attacking you right in the heart of yourself and letting it bother you, because that's going to weaken your influence over everything around you, and therefore the political spectrum outside world is going to come in and start attacking every other aspect. And a guy I've spoken to him before, not terribly recently, but I have before. He had an ex-wife, and she fell into because he was like so worried with his work and everything and not worrying about his own influence over his family, his wife fell into like the social media trap. And I mean like not like where we are in, where we're like trying to improve ourselves and other people, but the opposite side of the spectrum, where it's like you think you're making a positive impact in the world, but also you want to modify I'm saying for the sake of the algorithm here, modify the origin of your children's genitalia. I think that's a pretty safe thing to say. So I think you guys know what I'm saying though. And she fell into that trap,
Right.
and then it wound up in divorce and all that other stuff. And if he just wasn't so obsessed with his work and with all the other nonsense going on in the world, and he just focused on that, then his children wouldn't have been fallen victim. I don't think it actually eventuated, but it wouldn't have fallen victim to that and that mentality. And it's the same, you can see it in a lot of areas, actually. Like, there's the joke like Reddit being a cesspit. And the reason for that is it creates echo chambers because people feel lonely. And they go and they try to find a place where they belong. And there's that sweet whispering voice of the devil in these particular subreddits. And people fall into the trap of thinking like, these are my friends, these are the people that are going to comfort me. And really it's them not having that internal strength for themselves, or the strength from other influential people in their lives, and allowing that negative outside world to come in and influence them. And ultimately, if you don't want your children to fall into that, what I'm building up to here, is you have to have strong internal resolve in order to influence the people in your lives more than other people, or more than outside sources, I suppose. Because really it's not that circle of influence isn't isolated. I think this is where people where the model kind of fails a little bit. Because you have that 4-layer circle that I talked about, but then every one of those people outside has their own circle and they overlap. But then not only that, you also have the outside world, and the outside world has all these little circles, but they're all kind of working together as well, and they can come and overlap. And you can insulate yourself, but the only way you can insulate your family is by having a stronger influence. Because ultimately, it's easy to say now when you've got young kids, but when your kids are like 15, 18, 25, and they're in those still that very influential period, but you don't have as much, they have a lot more autonomy and there's a lot more opportunity for them to come across something you'd rather they didn't. Even though that you could say that's really easy anyway, but you have a lot less control, I suppose. Then you need to make sure that your influence is strong enough that the outside sources aren't going to negatively impact them as well. So it can be really, really dangerous.
I really like the concept of anti-fragile. I bring that up a lot. And in a lot of ways, it's talked about a lot in terms of like business. Like the reason why you should have multiple streams of income is to be anti-fragile. But even from a standpoint of you should be anti-fragile no matter who is voted into office, what politician is voted into office. You should be able to overcome that. And same thing with like inflation and all these other things that are outside of our control. You need to work to overcome those things, not to try to change them per se. Change them within your circle of influence that you can. And that's really in the way that you can control them to be changed is how, like, you're not going to vote somebody into office to change inflation. Those people are already, inflation is going to happen just because of a domino effect of things that have happened leading up to it. So, and with saying all that, no matter if Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, authoritarian, fascist, whatever. I guess that might be a little bit dramatic, but like you got to build yourself up to be an anti-fragile to be able to like overcome these sorts of things as much as you can. And I think that's really the crux of what I'm getting at here with who cares who wins. I mean, I care who wins in a way, but like my life will go on, and I'm working to build my life into something that it doesn't matter who, I mean, the president of the United States is. It's not going to drill into my family, like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like
So you go ahead, Jake.
no, I was gonna say, like, obviously, I'm a football coach. Like that's what I do for my job, along with teaching. But so one of the things that we talk about in with coaching all the time is control the controllables. Every week, the neat thing about football is you only play one game a week, so each week is its own unique game plan where you have to strategize on how you're going to defeat that opponent. And we sit in there and we watch film and we come up with ideas and draw out the plays and do all these things. At no point have we ever said, like, well, how can we make that guy on the other team not as good? Because we don't have any control over that. We have no control over the other team. All we can do is control who we are and come up with the best idea of how to defeat that problem, so to speak. How to defeat that opponent. Like, obviously here where we are down south in the south, like we've been doing stuff all summer. Our first quote unquote official day of practice is next Monday. Our first game is August 16th. Well, we've already started talking about that game that we play on August 16th. Well, we already know, like, they have a Division I running back, really, really good. Can we do anything about him? Is he going to suddenly not be as good? Absolutely not. All we can do is control what we do. And that's just such a huge thing, like with life, I think, in all aspects. Like, if you just focus on what you can do, I think, and not worry about everything else, it's honestly really uplifting in a way as well. Last summer I read the book, and I'm sure everybody knows about the book Extreme Ownership. And it's kind of funny because the follow-up book to that, which I'm now reading this summer right now, by the same guys, is The Dichotomy of Leadership, and where they basically talk about all of the stuff from the first book, but how there's always like balances in everything. But they still, the same premise is like, the more that you take control of your own everything, the more freeing it is, because now you're not worrying about outside influences. You're only focused on solutions, which is such a huge thing whenever you're trying to problem solve of any kind.
Jordan Peterson talks about, like, one of his chapters in 12 Rules for Life is clean your room before you try to change the world. And outside of all of Jordan Peterson's political dialogue and stuff like that, I think there's a good point to that that people miss a lot, and that is you have so much more impact over your life doing the things that you can control. You can clean your room, you can organize your desk, you can I mean, I'm talking from like I guess a high schooler point of view, but as you get up there in age and get more responsibility, you have more control over, cleaning your house and making sure it looks presentable from the outside, doing all those things before you go out and try to influence your local community, maybe your neighborhood or your friends and stuff like that. I mean, if I found out that a politician had, like, his house was dilapidated, falling apart, I'd be like, how is this guy going to run the whatever city, state, or country if his house is falling apart, You just you have to start from the atomic level, start from the very smallest things that you can control and work your way out from that. And I think we're kind of putting together a nice little puzzle here for people to like follow from the minute to the whatever to the macro that they can positively impact in their lives.
The way that we change the world as men, as husbands and as fathers, is through those roles that we take on. And even if politicians have good intentions to start, I think the influences of that particular sphere have too strong of a pull for 99% of people, maybe more. And the kind of people that should be politicians aren't, because they're so busy, doing things that make a bigger difference to their own lives. And the kind of people that are attracted to politics, even if they have good intentions, are the kind of people that also get influenced by the environment that climate creates. So I think a good example, and this isn't to get we're talking about politics, but this isn't to get too political, but there was a prime minister. I don't even know the name of the prime minister now or what he looks like. I don't know. That's how far removed from politics I am. But we had this prime minister, Jacinda Ardern. You guys ever heard of Jacinda Ardern before? Okay. You're the lucky ones. Okay, so Jacinda Ardern was obviously female prime minister, and she went up against someone who was and I think he inherited the prime ministership because the previous guy stepped down, and who was, I suppose, any prime minister is going to be, well, you'd think any prime minister would be hated, just like any president would be hated, but this was in a post-Trump era, and I have mixed feelings about any politician, and we're not here to talk about if Trump's good, bad, red. I always get the red and blue mixed up because here is opposite. So red's bad, apparent bad, blue's good. But depending on what your beliefs are, I suppose. But in general, the Red Party here, Labour, got in under Jacinda. And the whole thing was like, I'm going to fix all that. They always say these big promises. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix that. Everything's hunky-dory. Hey, Jacinda, are you pregnant? No, none of your business. I'm not pregnant. Well, turns out one of the first things she said when she got into leadership was that she's pregnant. So she started her whole career off on a lie. And instead of everyone being like, well, she's a liar, she's this, she's that, because we're in this post-Trump era, well, I don't think this has been true the whole time, but there was, this polarization has been true the whole time. As far back as politics have even been a thing, but it was at a significantly higher level. And instead of there being any kind of discourse about the subject, every single media firm aligned. And lo and behold, they suddenly got all this extra funding. Gee, I wonder where that was from. But the whole thing was like, everything started off in a lie. And she, historically, was a communist, comrade kind of communist, like openly saying comrade this and that. And she obviously went into that with good intentions. Perhaps misled. That's the single most murderous ideology in the history of man. But, she obviously went in there. Everyone, I think most people who at least start off believing in communism, even probably people who believe in it despite the fact that it's never been real communism, have the best of intentions. But it still corrupts them ultimately and turns them into liars and into the kind of people that say, I'm going to fix all this, and they wind up leaving the country a mess, despite the fact that everyone sings their praises. Because she was the prime minister who was here throughout the whole COVID thing, and just turned it into a mess. Like the amount of polarization here was very bad, very bad. Like people turning on, best friends. We had a neighbor when we lived in the city. We had a neighbor who rang up the police because another neighbor was going to work, and we had the police come up, and it was like a big ordeal. It was like a mess, man. There's like neighbors that were like neighbors for 10 years. And then all of a sudden, there's this woman in red on the news saying, "I'll report your neighbors if they're found leaving the house," and this environment that was created as a result, it just did so much harm, and the biggest harm that came from it was the fact that now everyone wants to pretend it never happened. We had people that weren't supposed to be going to get food without following these nonsense rules. We had 10-year. We had marriages break up. We had kids that were locked in their room and not being able to see by their parents because the government told them that was what to do. And instead of prioritizing their family, they prioritized what the government told them to do. And now everyone seems to have forgotten that. And the amount of damage that's done, I don't think will ever come undone in this generation. Unless obviously you were perfectly capable of forgetting to the point where it didn't even affect your neurological structure, which obviously isn't possible. I guess without a severe brain injury.
It's so wild because as like this is how much even in the age of the internet, this is how much censorship can still happen, at least as far as I'm aware. Like the media here really touted New Zealand as being like a unified country and uh like something to um like during all the COVID stuff going on, like something to for the US to aspire to. Like, yeah, yeah, we should be like New Zealand. Like,
I'm sure
they
the
like look at all them. They were like the first ones to like be 100% COVID free.
yeah, but we weren't, and it's like, I mean, if you really want to boil, I mean, we're not here to talk about code, but if you really want to boil it down to it, you know, you look in a textbook pre 2019 or whatever, and coronavirus is just the common cold. And so technically, in terms of having like coronaviruses, nobody was free of it. And it's like, it's nonsense at the end of the day. Like guys were doing that, like, I'll just take a whole bunch of tests until I'm positive and then I can get off work and get paid for free. And it's like, yeah, but meanwhile, like the business owners are suffering. And we had, again, I don't want to talk too much about COVID, but, we had, the government was like handing out money basically, like, oh, hey, by the way, here's all this free money. And it's like, well, where do you think that comes from? They're printing it. And they're like, oh, it's inflation. Oh, it's those dang anti-vaxxers' fault. And so there wasn't really a lot of unification, but that I could see. I mean, one of the strangest events I think has ever happened in New Zealand history was this thing called the Vaxathon. And again, not here to talk about the political side of that, but it was very bizarre to see how many people, well, like that was like a compelling case to them to go out and put the mystery goo in their bloody, And I know, some people felt compelled to because of their job, but most of the people that I've found that I've spoken to since that, I don't find that I think I could talk to for more than 5 minutes, let's say, are the kind of people who have said, no, I regret it and I wish I never had to do it. I felt pressured. It's not a nice way to be. And I don't blame people for that side of it, but the people that were like vehemently opposed, like wishing death on people. This is real things people would say, wishing death on people's children because their parents wouldn't follow the rules, quote unquote. It's despicable, and the amount of polarization that causes in a community is anything but unification. So the whole like.
That's what I was gonna say. I think that in so many instances, that this is also what the political circus does to us. Is in so many instances where there should be unification on things, it ends up being something divisive.
Yeah,
and exactly. Something that tears neighbors apart, tears families apart, and all because of what's portrayed. Either, I mean, not even necessarily, but I don't even want to like 100% vilify the media because, again, that's something that's in people's control. You don't have to watch the media. But even like literal politicians have gotten up on stage and said these things, to literally like vilify the opposition, and not just the opposition, but people who would go out and vote for the opposition get vilified as well. And that honestly has worked. I keep saying I want to say both ways because this is the United States, and as much as we try to pretend like it's not a two-party system, it is. And most other probably countries have a two-party system as well, because that's the only way that people get and remain in power is if there's a two-party system, because you can't. The third party's never going to win. They're only going to take votes away from one of the other two parties by being different enough to them, but also attracting their voters. Anyways, the point being that as a country you should be unified on so many topics, and a lot of this political circus stuff is just honestly just to keep your attention on them, and for them to keep their jobs. At the end of the day, a politician's number one, just like any of us that work or have a business, you want to stay in business or you want to keep your job. That's your number one goal at your job. Your number one goal at your job is not to, like, you as the person, your number one goal is not to make the person that employs you a bunch of money or to do the best that you can do. Your number one is to stay employed. And those other things like help that along the way. So a politician's number one job is to stay employed. If that means that they have 4 years they have a 4-year term, they're playing their whole first 4 years to get another 4 years to keep their job for another 4 years. That's what their job is. So you see a lot of, once politicians get even into office, they betray their own voter base by not doing the things that they said that they were going to do, because they actually don't have the ability to do that, or that wouldn't win them their second term. That's the way it is.
What I found. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that's the dichotomy of democracy. You know, we agree that democracy is good so that we can all have a vote and we can say what we get, a voice our opinion through our vote and all those types of things. But the trade-off is, because of it is democracy, you are now guaranteeing that politicians are always going to be full of shit, because they're only going to do what they have to do to try to get votes again, not necessarily doing what's right, but to do what's popular. So, you know, that's the double-edged sword that is democracy. Not to get super philosophical, but that's just always kind of been like my thoughts on it. Like,
Yeah.
it sounds good in theory, but like there is a trade-off there.
You don't currently teach history, right, Jake, or you do?
I do not currently teach history, but I have before, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's what's the phrase, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. So
yeah.
I think that I think it's, you know, time for a lot of people to learn from history and go back to the times when we weren't so reliant on it, no matter what the outcome is, you know.
Right.
And you could say that is a little bit of like more of obviously like a conservative or even libertarian thing to say, but that's the reality, because yeah. I don't want to push that boundary too far, because at the end of the day, I think the important thing is for people to realize that whoever does hold the power at any given time has a lot less power over your life than what you think they do.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Well, it's funny you said politicians are. Well, I don't think it's like a big revelation for most people, politicians being full of shit, and saying that they use these talking points to unify certain people, but really the things that we should all truly be unified actually get pushed back against because of the lives that are involved on either side. I'm not talking two-party system either side, on all sides I should say, of the spherical dimension that is politics. So for example, like microplastics is something we should all actually be pretty worried about, pretty concerned about. I hear talk that there's microplastics in our testicles right now, so I don't know how true that is, but I don't want to believe it, but it might very well be true. That's something that every man, we should all, red, blue, black, white, we should all be unified against. I get them out of there. But the thing is like everyone is so worried about these other elements, like, you got to be recycling this, and the rainforest being cut down, all this stuff, and yeah, okay, maybe not good, but at the end of the day, the thing that actually affects us is like plastics being thrown away and we're using plastic in the first place, and like if you look at in general about the kind of short-term thinking, I think that is involved with politics, because between all three of us, we're long-term thinking guys. But when it comes to the short-term thinking of politics, I think the best instance of it is in the light bulb. And there's a reason for this. So every kind of light that we use now, LEDs, fluorescence or compact fluorescence, drivers for halogens, these all have products that are like forever in them, like very hard to recycle, winds up in the landfill. You know what the most renewable form of a light bulb is? The incandescent. It is infinitely renewable. Like, it's an iron filament. Very easy to recollect. Lasts a lot longer.
Everything in it is, it's glass and iron and
it's
copper.
all harmless. It's all harmless.
Yeah.
But for some reason, all these other things get pushed. We've got to save power, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. But really, at the end of the day, the incandescent was the ultimate light bulb. What we need to do, instead of looking for these band-aid fixes, okay, we need LED lights, we need this, we need that. We need better ways to produce electricity and infrastructure capable of powering the incandescent bulb. And it's just, in terms of like industrial machinery and stuff, it's a small demand. But I think the very fact that it's boiled down to the fact now where everyone's got to have like, and I'm guilty of it. These aren't incandescent lights I'm using here, but boiling it down to like what people are concerned about typically tend to be band-aid fixes. Like, okay, we need things to be cheaper. Okay, let's make them plastic. Let's make us assemble them ourselves. This isn't like a fancy bookshelf. This is like a $79 bookshelf. I had to assemble that. What a pain. This desk is old though. This desk is like from the 60s or something. It was my mother's desk. So, that's really recycling. I didn't second or third hand now, I suppose. But the idea of us putting band-aid fixes on things is really embodies the nature of politics. It's like, we're going to fix all these things by doing X, Y, Z, when really nobody in politics has a long enough vision because they're prioritizing their employment and their payment over that of what it is to actually properly correct a problem. To properly correct the microplastics problem, okay, we're kind of stuffed at this point, frankly. But to truly correct it, you need a time machine to go back and think, oh, hey, maybe making things cheaper with plastic isn't the right choice. Maybe we need to do X, Y, Z. Maybe not using, well, it turns out copper pipes are carcinogenic as well, so maybe we can't win. But maybe not using plastic pipes, maybe not using plastic water bottles, maybe the landfill next to the ocean. Or do you guys know about I think it's called the Marlboro ship? You guys know about this? So in New York, I might be the right name, but in New York they had a trash problem, right? So they loaded this big barge up with rubbish, right? So a huge boat, right? And they were like, right, push it off. See you later. It just took sending it out to the ocean. That was the solution to the problem. And that's probably even a better example than the light bulb. That just shows like that was the mayor. I did it. We got rid of the pollution kind of thing. And that's not the solution. Like, look at New York now. It's like that didn't fix the problem. They just pushed and the funny thing was, I think it came back or like just went down shore a little bit and then landed there and became a problem. But that just shows like. Perfectly embodies the kind of mentality involved with politics when really true solutions for ourselves, like, okay, you want to lose weight, okay, not eating that one bag of chips isn't your problem. It's your lifestyle is the problem. You want to fix your house up, okay, well, it starts by not destroying what's already there. You want to pay your car off, well, it starts off with getting your budgeting in order and probably not buying more car than you could afford, frankly. It's all these long-term visions that we have to do. We want to have a family that sits close together. Well, it starts off with our parenting and the way that the relationship that we build with our children, and because it's going to impact theirs. Politics is about more than the 4-year term. It's like, well, for you guys it's 4 years. I think it's 3 here. I actually don't know. That's how little I care. But
it depends on what position,
and that too. But ultimately, and people can get involved in politics and be mayors for years. Like the mayor here has been mayor for years, for like, I don't know, 12 years or something. I don't actually know, but a long time. I see him everywhere. We always make a joke about him, Matt Ducey. We call him Matt Juicy when we see his ads everywhere. but he, the idea is that it takes a long-term vision to actually impact something. Like you want to plant a forest, well, you're not going to like go and buy a huge pine and slap it in the ground. It's going to die probably. I don't know that much about replanting a 20-year-old pine, but it starts off with these little seedlings that you want to put in the ground, and then you've got to make sure you put them in the right place. You put them haphazardly, and they're going to shade each other out. And if you're going to be dominant, it's going to be a sparse forest. But you structure it properly, you can have a dense forest. It's the same thing with politics, except all they're doing is saying, oh, we'll stick a tree here. This person wants to hear about this, so we'll tell them we'll put a tree there, but well, we won't actually do that, but we got their vote anyway. And that's what all of politics seems to be like. And sure, some things change. Some things happen. But collectively, over the past 100 years, at this point, I think, fair to say, let's say 80 at worst, okay, has all of these things, red, blue, purple, pink, whatever color you think are the good guys, has any of this made a positive change to the average person's life? Do we, as the average man, I think they're capable, but does the average man have the general idea that their wife will never have to go to work and work for another man? No. Most men now accept that their wives are going to work. Do most families go out of their way or have the option, 100% independent decision, to not put their children in daycare so they can have a more positive impact on their family? No. Most people feel like they have to put their children in daycare. Do most people believe that they can homeschool? No. Most people put their children in school. And I know that people feel that they have to, and for a lot of people they do have to. But the point is that their options are not afforded to them. Their options are being removed as a decision. Again, blue, red, pink, purple, orange, whatever. I think the first name that came to mind when I said orange. But the point is that none of this actually has made a positive difference. You know, it's like, oh, now we accept gay marriage. Okay. Can Billy Joe let his wife stay at home so she can raise their kids? Can Billy Joe eat meat 7 times a week? No. Well, that sucks. That's not good for him. He doesn't care about gay marriage. That's ridiculous. 50 years ago, he could have been a ditch digger and bought a house. And now, if you're a ditch digger, you have to go and work a night shift as well, just to get by. None of this has made a good, positive impact. And the only way around it isn't saying, oh, I need the orange man, or, oh, look, Biden fell down the stairs. That's nonsense. The only way out of that now isn't to say, oh, I'm going to vote for this guy. Oh, I'm going to be worried night and day about, an attempted political assassination or whatever it is. What actually matters is making a difference in your own life, because these politicians are going to do everything in their power. And it's maybe not individual politicians, but the system as a whole. It's going to do everything in its power to take it away from you. They want you dependent. They want you to be stuck in the system, and they want to be able to control you. And there's a reason for that, because the people, and this is going back to the COVID thing, not to talk too much about it, but you look at the people who were like living it up during the COVID thing. They were like, in the UK, the Prime Minister and his buddies were like having tea parties, while the people were like getting reported if they didn't go out and bang on pots and at 6 p.m. or whatever it was, I forget the 2 minutes hate that they had there, or 2 minutes love, I suppose I'd call it. But it's that is the kind of world that has been built, and the way that we undo that isn't by continuing down this path and being concerned about it. Never again is Billy Joe going to be able to go and be a ditch digger and buy a house. It's gone. Maybe in Skid Row. Okay, maybe. But, he's not going to be able to buy like the American dream house. That's gone now. The only way to get that back is if Billy Joe levels up. He can't be letting the political stress get to him. He can't be worried about people falling down the stairs, tripping over bikes, a little goofy, But, that's not a problem. Now, have a laugh, but move on. It's time to go and build something and make something for your family, because that's the only way you're going to regain control at this point. That's my 5 minute spiel to close us out.
I definitely, I agree 100%. You have to start with what you have influence over, and build from there. You have to build your dynasty, build your empire from there, and I mean, going back to your ditch digger, if that means you have to work a second shift to build something on the side, or if you have to, go home and log on to X or whatever, and make your dream come true that way. That's what we're. And I'm not like Mr. Hustle and grind your way to success, but I think that putting in consistent, concerted effort on a daily basis to improve the life of you and your family is what every man who's really had a meaningful impact on this world has done, is to put in that consistent and concerted effort for himself and his family. And that trickles over into the world, that bleeds out into the world, and people see that, and you inspire people to do the same, and they have their own little pockets of resistance from spending their frivolously spending their attention on things that don't affect them and their family like they themselves can.
I strongly agree. And another thing, I think it's a pretty good place to close it. So I think another thing that really benefits men and improving their influence and improving the control they have over their lives is delayed gratification. And Trent, for those of you listening, you can't see it, but those of you watching, you might have noticed there's a little something behind Trent. And he is finally very close to releasing his book. That is his proof copy that he's ordered. I recognize the grey band. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Trent?
Yeah, so I wrote a book about delayed gratification. It's a pretty raw conversational piece. Um, think of it like I'm having a conversation with you, maybe even giving you advice. I wrote it to be not boring to read. So, in that regard, everything that I owe in my life is due to delayed gratification. And I think that, I mean, most of us really, our bloodline is owed to delayed gratification. Somewhere along the line, your ancestors have given you the opportunity to be on this earth, whether or not you have children of your own or not. I think you owe that to somebody else to recognize that there was delayed gratification that caused you to have a being here. And in saying all that, what I believe is that if you are seeking success in whatever way that you phrase that, whatever success means to you, you're only going to get there through delayed gratification. Um, and I talk about my five main facets of life: faith, family, finance, fitness, and friends. Um, those are the main key points, but there's a lot in there. Um, Stuff that someday I'll be proud to share with my kids at the very least. So
Yes, yeah, I've actually read through it. Everyone listening and watching, very good. You don't, and it is very readable. I blitzed it in a morning. And that's me reading. I'm a very intense reader when I actually get around to it. So it's a very good book, and I do recommend that you go and pick it up. When's it coming out, Trent?
August 2nd. So Friday,
Holy,
August
that's
2nd.
not far away. We've got to talk, man. I
Yeah.
gotta get some emails out for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's August 2nd. It is official. I think it's available for pre-order right now on Amazon. So if this goes live before it's out, yeah, it'll be available for pre-order on Amazon. To those who wait, the life-changing power of delayed gratification.
Very cool. I'm excited to see
That's
the release
awesome.
of it. I might have to go and pre-order it now, actually. So, Jake, how's everything going with your marriage course, man?
Well, I mean, it's going good. Like it's out. It's been out now for a while. For me, it's kind of funny because I was thinking about my course when we were having this talk because, the whole theme of this is like focusing on what you can control, focus on, like Trent said it just a minute ago, like building your own family dynasty. And, I've said before, and I will always continue to say the first foundational layer of building a family dynasty is your marriage, and even going back to that the circle of influence that we were talking about earlier. Like once you have yourself and you move on to your family, I would even break in the family portion into your marriage and then to your children because, anyone who has a marriage that's broken or fractured or whatever, there's no way you can be the parent that you're trying to be if you're not even being the spouse that you need to be. And so, obviously I write a lot about marriage content and this course is for me is it's like a 15-year journey, like the culmination of that. My wife and I just celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary. We've been together for 20 years now, and we've done everything good and bad. Like about 3.5 years ago, we were on the verge of getting a divorce, and I think the fact that we were able to overcome that speaks to what's in that course, which is that, going back to the long term mindset, you have to have a generational mindset and understanding that the decisions and the choices you make now not only impact your marriage, but they impact your family for generations to come. And so, that's kind of the premise behind the course. Specifically, like I talk a lot about communication and intimacy in there because those are the two, I guess, foundational pieces in marriage. And also, probably not surprisingly, that's where most marriages go wrong, is usually something related to communication and intimacy as well. So, I'm really proud of it because I think that it's something that can help anyone who checks it out. It's not my marriage is in trouble, so that's the only way I would benefit from this. I think even people who are happily married for decades would get something out of it because, my wife and I, if nothing else, we've had a very interesting journey together. We've been through a lot, and yet here we are, like, still, happier than ever. And so, it's definitely something that is like the best representation I could make for our time that we've made together and things that we still continue to work on, moving forward.
I'd like to add to your circle of influence kind of thing. Maybe there's like a shell even that's kind of like around you before you can influence other people. There's I think I've been saying a lot to guys lately. I don't know if I've said it on this podcast before or even to you guys actually, but when you do anything, your general mood kind of bleeds through into it. And I was looking at one of my pages recently, and I was like, I look at it now that I'm in a, I wouldn't say I'm like in the best headspace, but I'm in a better one than I was. And I look at it, and I'm like, man, I was pissed when I did this. I could just see how frustrated I am. And it has nothing to do with the frustration I was feeling. The frustration I was feeling had, completely disparate from this particular page. But it came through. And then I was like, well, I'm going to go back and look at my content. And I looked at my content from that period, and I was like, man, I was pissed. And part of that, and this isn't to do with my marriage, but the fact that I was not in a good headspace was coming through in other elements of my life, including into my marriage. It wasn't from my marriage, but it was bleeding through. And there's kind of like a thing that a lot of guys, and probably women too, can't speak for that, but at least guys, they believe they can compartmentalize more than they can. And, if your wife wants to get intimate, you could probably block out most stuff, let's say. But there's still like if you are at work and you've had an argument with your wife, or you want to try and connect more with your children, or you want to build a business, or you want to, just take a day off. If it's tainted by this underlying current from anything, then it kind of pulls away from your ability to complete or enjoy that or do that to the fullness of your ability. And I don't think that there's like a point at which the word better becomes irrelevant. There's always a place for you to improve. And if you can't improve these base level things, which starts with yourself, but then probably the second most important thing in your life. And I say yourself's most important because, if you don't exist, there is nothing else. But then, probably the second most important thing is your marriage. If you can't, influence positively that shell that's surrounding you and that circle of influence like we were talking about earlier, then you're really going to struggle to break through that to get to other things. It's going to detract from everything. It's like a filter almost that you go through in all your other interactions, ignoring the friend side and everything. It could be your work. It could be the business that you're building. It could be your exercise. You're going through this filter of the one that's supposed to be closest to you. And you might even be in like a bad spot, but better never stops. And if you can improve it, then all the other interactions that you have out there in the world will improve. So for that very reason, I really recommend Jake's course, because you're improving that filter. And with that, regardless of what state you're in, you could be borderline divorce, you could be happiest of your life. You go through the course, even happier, even better. And that means every other aspect of your life is going to improve because of this shell, this filter that you're going through to impact everything else. So anyway, that's my my pitch for you, Jake. Buy your own course now. It's as for me, I'm actually doing a few renovations at the moment. By the time this comes out, well, actually, I don't know. Maybe they'll be done by the time it gets out. I'm busy with. I'm playing farmer at the moment. I'm doing all this fencing, but I'm not here to sell you on fencing products. Though I could probably recommend a couple at this point. I'm actually doing a few changes at the moment, and I've been pitching Lords of X a lot. And you probably, if you're listening to this, you probably know what Lords of X is at this point. It's a paid private community for you to build your influence and business and revenue on X. I've actually just introduced a new pricing tier that makes it a little bit more accessible. It's a little bit more limited, but if budgets are concerned to you or you're just starting out, then it's probably going to be a much better entry level for you. And at the moment, I don't want to date this too much in case the price increases. Well, it probably will in the future, but at the moment that's $25 a month, and then we have the standard tier, which is $50 a month. So that's one thing I'm working on. But also, I'll put a link in the bio here. Oh, sorry, in the bio, that's what I have it. And the show notes or the description of this video, depending on how you're watching this. And that's going to link to a few of the other things that I do, because I have quite a few things that I put together that will be of benefit to you, like from this book here and this book here. If you want your children to learn about delayed gratification, Trent and Ben unite. The theming is quite similar, but it's more oriented towards children and the impact of the decisions you make. I also have courses. You want to design a family emblem for yourself. I've got a course that'll help you do that. You want to learn what it takes to build a dynasty. I have a free course you can do for that. I'm crazy. It's a huge course, 20-day email course, free. Get on it. I have brain building guides. I have a guide to get your children to quit screens for good so their brain can actually develop. I got lots of stuff. You want to improve your family and improve your life and build a dynasty. I'm going to leave a link for you in the show notes or description, and you can check it out. See what fits your family. Quite a few free stuff in there too. I'm crazy. All right. Insane for giving some of this stuff away. So before I change my mind, go and click that link. And I think with that, guys, that's the hour. So we did pretty well, I think.
Disregard politics, acquire dynasties.
Yeah, that's a new tagline for the show. All right, well, I'm going to sign it out now, guys. I'm going to stop the recording and wish everyone listening a good morning, afternoon, evening. I'm terrible at closing things, all right? Good morning, afternoon, evening. Thanks you guys for joining me. Thanks to the sheep for interrupting my outro.
Oh,
it's a sheep,
sheep's
yes.
no moo.
Yeah. Apparently, maybe on the other side of the world. All right, I'm going to close it out now, guys. So thanks again.